Hands go soft, your jaw unclench, and your eyes drift low like a heavy curtain at dusk. Take a slow breath in, and as you exhale, let the day melt away, like fog dissolving over an open field. There is no rush here, no noise, just the quiet rhythm of your breath, and the world fading gently into shadow. You're safe here, you're calm, and you're ready to drift back in time. Our story today begins in a place between silence and war, between healing and heartbreak, in a wooden hospital tent nestled somewhere on the French front during the winter of 1916. It begins in the cold, not the bitter kind that bites, but the slow kind, the kind that seeps in through canvas flaps and settles in your joints. You wake before dawn, though you never truly sleep. Outside, the morning fog has not lifted. It creeps low through the trees, swirls around the boot prints left in frozen mud, and curls its way through the flaps of the hospital tent. Inside, the air is warm from breath and body and the wood-burning stove in the corner, but still the cold lingers. It clings to your hands, reddens your knuckles, cracks the skin near your nails. You flex your fingers as you rise, and already you can hear the groans from the cot soft, scattered like waves. You were dreaming of nothing. That's how you know you're tired. You pull your apron over your uniform, tie the strings with slow fingers, and pin your Red Cross badge back to your chest. It's already stained, but there's comfort in that, the way something can be worn and still mean something. Outside the tent, boots crunch the frost-hardened ground. A truck rumbles in the distance. The war is always present, like a pulse beneath the earth, but for now, for this moment, you simply breathe. Your day begins with the wounded. You move between the beds with a practiced stillness, your steps soft, your voice softer. Some of the men wake when you pass, eyes flickering open like lanterns half lit. Others do not. One stares at the ceiling and does not blink. You check his chart. His name is Charles. His age is 20. He hasn't spoken in 2 weeks. They say it's shell shock. They say a lot of things. You sit beside him, gently wipe the fever from his brow, and hum a song you can't quite remember the words to. He does not move, but his breath quickens slightly. That's enough. Across the tent, there's a man with a missing leg. He doesn't cry. He laughs too loud at things no one said. You refill his morphine. You do not tell him the wound is infected. You do not tell him the surgeon is already planning another cut. He looks at you with bloodshot eyes and calls you Angel. You nod. You smile. You are too tired to correct him. Sometimes you cry, but only in the supply room. The room is dark and smells of antiseptic and metal. Bandages stacked like linen ghosts. You count them every day, even though you don't need to. It helps. There is something grounding in gauze and numbers. Some nights you sit on the floor and press your back to the cool wall and close your eyes. In those moments you let your shoulders fall, let the tears come silent and brief, and then you stand again, because the next ambulance has arrived, and there are more boys who need saving. Outside, snow begins to fall. It does not stick to the ground, it mixes with mud and vanishes, but it reminds you of home. You think of snowflakes catching in your hair when you were a girl. You think of your sister's laugh, the smell of gingerbread, the weight of quiet December mornings. But those thoughts are brief. There are more men coming. A stretcher bearer's voice calls out, low and urgent. Gas case. Still breathing. You run. The gas burns everything. It strips the voice, scorches the lungs, blinds the eyes. The boy they carry in is no older than 16. His face is greenish. His mouth works like a fish pulled from water. You do not hesitate. You know what to do. You rinse his eyes with saline. You press a damp cloth over his mouth. You whisper gently words you've learned to say even when you don't mean them. You're safe now. You're all right. You're going to be fine. His hands clutch at your sleeve. He doesn't let go. You work until the spasms pass, until his breath evens, until he sleeps. You do not know if he will wake again, and still the day continues. You help with an amputation. You clean the saw yourself. There is no time for sterilization. You hold the lantern while the doctor mutters Latin beneath his breath. You do not look away. You cannot afford to faint. When the procedure is over, you wash your hands 3 times. The blood clings like guilt. You write a letter home for a soldier who has no hands. He dictates slowly. His voice cracks on the word mother. You fold the letter gently, slide it into an envelope, and promise to mail it tomorrow. You won't forget. You never forget. The sun begins to set. Its light is soft, filtered through canvas and fog. You light the oil lamps one by one. The tent glows with a warm amber hue. The men begin to sleep, some from exhaustion, some from medication. You tuck a blanket beneath one man's chin, whisper good night to another. In the corner, Charles still stares at the ceiling, but his eyes are following shadows now. That's something. You smile, even if he doesn't see it. And as the night deepens and the world outside grows quiet, you finally sit, just for a moment. Your body aches. Your hands tremble. But the fire crackles in the stove, and the beds are still. You did what you could. Tomorrow will come soon enough. You close your eyes. The scent of iodine and iron fills your lungs. And in the stillness, you let yourself drift. Your thoughts drift like smoke, curling through memories that never quite settle. But even when your body rests, your ears listen for coughing, for crying, for the sudden silence that means something is wrong. The oil lamp beside you flickers softly, casting gold across the canvas walls. Outside, the wind rustles through brittle trees. You wonder if the enemy can hear it, too. You wonder if they lie awake, just like you, with the same dull ache in their legs and the same thoughts in their chests. You wonder if they have nurses, if they call them angels, too. Sometime before dawn, you rise again. You move without thinking now, each motion, a pattern etched into your bones. You light the stove. You check the men. You rewrap dressings on wounds that should have healed long ago. You chart fevers. You hum songs beneath your breath, not for comfort, but out of habit. The tent is quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fire and the slow breaths of sleeping soldiers. You let the quiet hold you like a blanket, if only for a few moments. The doctor enters with the dawn. His coat is too thin, and his boots are wet with frost. He doesn't speak much anymore. Neither do you. You've both learned that words take too much energy. Together, in silence, you change a dressing on a wound that smells of rot. You don't flinch. He doesn't either. The man beneath the bandage does not wake. You wonder if he will. You place a hand on his shoulder when you're done, just in case. Breakfast is soup again, thin, tasteless, but hot. The men sip slowly. A few manage tired smiles. One asks if there's bread today. You shake your head. He nods, as if he expected that answer. You tell him there may be some tomorrow. You don't know if it's true. You just want him to eat. Mid-morning brings the next ambulance. The sound is unmistakable metal grinding over frozen earth, wheels creaking the distant bark of orders. You step outside as the doors swing open. 4 stretchers. One man moans. The others are still. You and the other nurse begin triage without speaking. It's like a dance you've rehearsed too many times. You press gauze to a neck wound, murmur to a boy missing fingers, check a pulse on a man who no longer has one. You cover his face. Move to the next. Inside the tent, the air warms quickly with new pain. There's blood on your skirt before noon. You don't change. There's no point. One of the new patients is delirious. He calls for his mother, then for someone named Clara. You hold his hand, let him cry, whisper that Clara is safe, that you'll write to her. You don't know if he hears. Later, you find the photograph tucked inside his uniform. A woman smiling in sunlight. You clean it gently. Set it beside him. You take pride in small things. The way you learned to stitch a wound in silence. The way you can find the last clean cloth with your eyes closed. The way you remember every man's name, even the ones who don't remember their own. There's dignity in that, in remembering, in seeing people as more than numbers, more than uniforms, more than what the war has done to them. But there are days when the weight is too much, like when the infection spreads too far, and you know they won't survive. When you pack the wounds with salt and gauze anyway, because doing something feels better than doing nothing. When the morphine runs out and the only thing you can offer is your voice. When they look at you with eyes filled with fear and ask if they're going to die, and you have to choose whether to lie or not. Today is one of those days. You lose 3 before sundown. You sit with one of them. As he fades, he asks you to sing. You do. Your voice is quiet, a little cracked, but steady. He smiles. And then he's gone. You close his eyes, fold his hands, say a prayer. Later, you carry his belongings to the corner table, his watch, his tags, a letter with no stamp. You don't cry this time. You just sit on the edge of your cot and stare at your hands. They don't feel like yours anymore. They are cracked and red, the skin worn thin from scrubbing, from lifting, from holding. You remember when your hands held books, fabric, the small hand of your niece on summer walks. Now they hold pain. They hold lives. The surgeon asks you to assist with another operation. You nod. Your body moves. You light the lamp. Prepare the table. Lay out the tools. The man on the table is awake when you arrive. You give him a cloth to bite. You whisper that it will be fast. It won't, but you say it anyway. When it's over, you clean the tools, scrub the blood, wipe the floor. The doctor lights a cigarette and walks into the cold. You stay behind. You check the man's pulse again, still steady. You mark it in the chart. Later, as the lamps glow low and the patients settle into sleep, you find yourself near the boy with the gas burns. He is still breathing, though shallow. You touch his forehead. It's cool. You whisper, "You're safe now." You don't know if it's true, but you say it anyway. Outside, snow begins to fall again. You step out for a breath of fresh air. The flakes drift down like ash soft, slow, soundless. The sky is a deep, endless gray. You pull your coat tighter. The air smells of wood smoke and salt. Somewhere in the distance, a fox barks once, then silence. You close your eyes. You imagine fields that aren't torn by shellfire, rivers that run clean, children laughing. You imagine home. You imagine peace inside the wounded sleep. And for a moment, so do you, like distant thunder. You rise without thinking, without groaning, without resistance. Your body moves like a bellows. Inhale, exhale, bend, rise. You're not sure where you end and the hospital begins anymore. You check the cot nearest the sound. It's the boy from earlier, Clara's boy. His cheeks are flushed, his breath shallow and fast. You place a cool cloth across his forehead, tuck the photograph back beneath his fingers, and whisper his name like it's a prayer. He doesn't stir. You record his temperature. It's too high. You call for the doctor, but your voice is still a whisper. There are no hours anymore, only rhythms. The routine of pain and tending. The soft clink of metal trays, the sigh of morphine leaving a syringe. The rustle of sheets as someone turns in their sleep. There is comfort in these small sounds. They remind you that things are still moving, that you are still moving, that even here in the belly of war, life stirs on. When the sun finally rises, it paints the world in dull gold and blue. The sky is clouded, the snow a thin crust on the ground. You boil water for the morning wash, the steam curling around your face. It smells clean. It smells like purpose. You clean wounds again, change bandages that stick too tight to skin. You comb lice from scalps and wipe away tears before they fall. Some men thank you with words, some with eyes, some with silence. You understand all three. One man writes poetry in his journal when he thinks no one sees. You've read a few lines when he falls asleep. They are about birds and sunlight, and once about a girl with red hair who waits by the sea. You return the book gently to his chest each time. He never asks about it, but you always make sure it's close by. Lunch is cold today. You take only a few bites, your appetite long vanished. There's word of an incoming convoy more wounded, some badly. The surgeon sharpens his tools. The other nurses prepare fresh linens. You roll more bandages, your fingers moving rhythmically, the cloth soft and endless in your lap. You hum again, something old, something slow. It helps. The ambulance arrives in a haze of frost and exhaust. 6 this time. 2 are already gone. You recognize one of the wounded as a boy you tended last month back again. Different wound, same smile. Still kicking, he jokes. You laugh softly because he needs to hear it. You guide his stretcher inside, touch his shoulder gently, tell him he'll be all right. You don't know if it's true, but your voice is steady. That's what matters. The worst case is a man with burns across half his face. You suppress the instinct to recoil. You've seen worse, but it still catches in your chest. You wipe away the soot, the dried blood, the remnants of uniform. He whimpers once. His hand finds yours blindly. You let him hold it, even as you clean the wound. He won't speak. Maybe he can't. Maybe he won't. The afternoon blurs. Time becomes a loop, bed to bed, breath to breath. You assist with 2 surgeries, both leg wounds. One clean, one not. The clean one might walk again. The other won't. You don't tell him that. You offer water, you smooth the sheets, you light the lamps as the sky begins to dim. The warmth of the tent becomes a cocoon, filled with quiet pain and softer hope. That evening, the boy with the poetry wakes up smiling. He asks if there's bread. You shake your head again. He nods, says he dreamed of his sister's wedding, says she wore violets. You listen, let the story unfold like silk. You tuck him in again. He thanks you with a whisper. Later, the man with the burns finds his voice. Just one word. Pain. You place a wet cloth across his lips. You hold his hand. You tell him you're here, that he's not alone. You say it again, just in case he didn't hear you the first time. He grips your fingers. He doesn't let go until sleep takes him. You sit alone in the supply room after lights out. The smell of antiseptic is stronger here. The lamp glows softly beside a stack of linens. You stare at your reflection in a pan of water. You look older, you feel older. But beneath the exhaustion is something else, something deeper. A quiet strength you didn't have before the war. You place a hand over your chest. Your heartbeat is slow, steady, like the ticking of time through a broken world. Outside, the fox calls again. You open the tent flap just enough to see the stars. They are faint, but they are there. Pinpricks of light in a sky too vast to understand. You wonder if your family sees the same stars, if they think of you when the wind rises. You whisper their names to the night, one by one, like a lullaby. Then you return inside. You check each patient one last time. Straighten blankets, adjust pillows. The tent is quiet, peaceful. You smile to yourself, just a little. And when you finally rest your head against your cot, your last thought before sleep is not of war, but of home, of a fire in a hearth, of bread baking, of snow falling outside a warm window. You let that image carry you gently into sleep, like bruises fading from a sky that forgets to be blue. Your eyes open before the lantern is lit, before the birds begin their cautious morning calls. The sound that wakes you is a whisper, or maybe a dream, or maybe nothing at all. But you rise because that's what you do. The tent is still. The cots lined like gravestones, men wrapped in wool and pain. Your joints ache as you stretch. Your spine cracks softly as you bend. You sip a mouthful of cold water and button your uniform in silence. Today begins like the others with breath and bandages. You move gently between the rows, checking temperatures, refolding dressings that came loose in the night. One man mutters through a fever dream, speaking a name in a language you don't know. Another stares at you with eyes too wide and too still. You kneel beside him and offer a hand. Slowly, carefully, his fingers wrap around yours. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. You stay there until his eyes soften. The doctor arrives later than usual. His face is drawn tight, his expression unreadable. He nods once to you, then disappears into the operating tent. You don't ask why. Everyone carries their own ghosts here, and some are too fresh to name. You begin sorting medical supplies, gauze, alcohol, the dwindling morphine. You count everything twice. You mark the bottles with charcoal. You make sure the scissors are sharp. Around mid-morning, a patient begins to scream. It's not uncommon. Sometimes it's pain, sometimes dreams, sometimes something no one understands. You rush to his side. His eyes are open, but they don't see you. He thrashes, hands clawing at air. You whisper to him, slow, steady, gentle, as steam rising from tea. You place a hand on his shoulder, another on his chest. You tell him he's safe, that the war is not inside the tent, that he's not in the trench anymore. Eventually, he stills. His body sinks back into the cot like a tide going out. Sweat soaks the pillow. You wipe his brow, change his shirt. When he sleeps, it's shallow and restless, but it's sleep. You stay near him for a while, just in case. Later, a chaplain visits. He moves quietly, stepping around bloodstains and water buckets like they're sacred. He offers a prayer to each man who wants one, and silence to those who don't. He carries a pocket Bible and speaks in a voice like soft wood smoke. You listen from a distance, folding linens in rhythm with his words. There is comfort in ritual, even if your belief has grown tired. That afternoon, you receive word from the front. A large push is expected tonight. The surgeon calls a meeting with all staff. He speaks quickly, without flourish dozens more wounded, maybe hundreds. You nod. The other nurses nod. No one panics. There is no room for panic here. You prepare the tent. Clear out supplies, strip beds, burn soiled linens, boil instruments, lay out cots like waiting arms. You feel yourself become still, not cold, not numb, but quiet in the way a river goes silent under ice. Focused, present. You do not think of what's coming. You think only of now. The next bed, the next tray, the next stitch. This is how you survive here. Not by hope, not by fear, but by task and touch and quiet. When night falls, the air turns sharp. The lanterns are lit early. The stove crackles, but the heat barely reaches your knees. You wrap your scarf tighter. The first ambulance arrives before full dark. 3 stretchers. One man walks in on his own, shaking but upright. You take his arm, guide him to a cot. His sleeve is soaked in blood, but he insists he's fine. You smile, nod, and begin cutting away the fabric. The wound beneath is deep, clean but deep. You praise him for walking in. You don't tell him how lucky he is. The next hour is a blur of motion. More ambulances, more stretchers, more blood. The moans grow louder. The surgeons work without pause, sweat dripping into their eyes despite the cold. You hand instruments, you mop brows. You hold heads still during stitching. You clean the floors between patients. Your hands never stop. They move like clockwork, like memory, like instinct. In the far corner, a boy dies while waiting his turn. There was no time to reach him. You cover him with a sheet. You whisper, "I'm sorry." You whisper it again. Then you keep moving. The burns come next. 2 men with skin blistered and raw, gas attack victims. You have a bucket of water, cloths, saline, that's all. You begin rinsing the wounds, careful not to break what skin remains. They scream. You whisper. One curses you, another begs. You do not flinch. You keep going. A hand grabs yours unexpectedly fierce, desperate. You turn. A soldier you thought unconscious is awake now, eyes wide with fear. He says nothing, just grips your wrist. You squeeze his hand. You meet his eyes. You stay with him. When he finally lets go, it's not because he's calm, but because he's gone. You do not have time to cry. The night wears on. The tent is full. The air is thick with breath and smoke and antiseptic. You can feel the fatigue settling in your spine, your knees, your skull. You press a cloth to your forehead. You sip water. You light another lamp. You remind yourself, 1 more hour, just 1 more hour. Then maybe you can rest. Pressing, and the 3rd man who stops breathing. The oil lamps flicker low. their glow stretching shadows across canvas walls. The stove is nearly out, its heat a distant memory. But you are still moving, still standing. Your boots squelch against the blood-slick floorboards as you walk from cot to cot, your apron stiff with dried saline and gauze lint. Somewhere outside, another ambulance creaks to a stop. You don't turn your head. Someone else will get it. For now, your hands are full. There is a soldier with shrapnel in his thigh. He's awake barely and speaking in broken syllables. English isn't his first language. You nod to every word, even the ones you don't understand. You reach for his hand when the pain sharpens. He doesn't flinch. His eyes dart between the ceiling and your face. You keep speaking in a soft, steady rhythm. You don't know if the words matter, only the tone. The leg is bad. You know it as soon as the doctor uncovers it. You prepare for amputation. You steady the light. You bite your lip when the bone snaps. Later you find a lull. Not quiet, not peace, but a moment where the chaos thins, where no one is screaming, where you can hear your own breath. You wipe your hands. You step outside the tent. The air is sharp, like glass against the lungs. Frost crusts the edges of footprints. A thin mist curls low over the earth, rising like steam from a tired pot. The night sky hangs low, swollen with stars and smoke. You close your eyes. For one long moment, you let your mind go still. Not empty, just still. You feel your heartbeat in your fingertips, your breath in your chest, and in that small pause, that single second of solitude, you remember who you are, or who you were. A girl with ink-stained fingers, a girl who read poetry under trees, a girl who once thought war was something that happened in books. Then you go back inside. The tent welcomes you like a breath held too long. The light is softer now. Some of the men are sleeping. One hums quietly in his cot, a lullaby in a language you don't know. You hum along anyway. You mop a brow, adjust a bandage, add another log to the stove. In the far corner, someone is weeping. You walk slowly to him. He's young. His leg is gone. His eyes are wide and wet and frightened. He says, "I don't remember it happening." You kneel beside him. You say, "It's all right." He says, "What do I do now?" And you don't answer. Because there is no answer, so you stay with him. That's what you do. You hold his hand, you listen. And when his breathing slows, when his eyelids lower, you sit there a while longer. By dawn, your hands are shaking. Not from fear, not from cold, just from being. The kind of tremble that comes from too many hours, too many tasks, too many names you no longer dare to forget. You press your palms together, hold them tight. They still. You make tea. It's weak but warm. You pour yourself a cup and sip slowly. Another nurse sits beside you. Her eyes are hollow with exhaustion. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. But sitting there together, sharing steam, sharing silence, it helps. Just a little. Outside, the frost begins to melt. Inside, the morning light stretches across the cots. The men begin to stir. The cycle begins again. You are ready. Canvas shifting in the wind, and the slow, reluctant groans of men waking in pain. You stand from your stool, stretch your spine until it pops softly like kindling, and roll your shoulders beneath the stiff collar of your uniform. The tea in your hand has gone cold, but you sip it anyway. Bitterness is just another form of comfort now, another kind of real. You begin the day with fresh linen and new hope. That's what the nurse beside you says, anyway, with a small, crooked smile. Her eyes are rimmed red. You both laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's better than crying. You wash your hands with freezing water. The soap barely lathers. Still, you scrub your palms until they feel raw, clean enough for now. The first patient to need you is a man with frostbite. His boots were left on too long, or not long enough. You unwrap his toes one layer at a time, the flesh peeling like old fruit. He watches your face the whole time, as if searching for something, maybe pity, maybe fear. You offer neither. You offer steady hands and a bowl of warm water. That's what you can give. And when you're done, he thanks you with a nod, eyes shining. You nod back. There's no need to speak. You change 2 bandages and 1 dressing, and then another ambulance arrives. It's smaller this time, just 2 stretchers, no sirens, no rush. One man is unconscious. The other won't stop laughing. You meet the eyes of the medic and nod. Shell shock. The laughing man clutches a paper flower in one hand, crushed and limp. He keeps calling it his medal. You take it gently, tuck it in his breast pocket, and guide him to a cot. When you place a blanket over his legs, he looks at you like you've crowned him king. The unconscious man is worse, breathing shallow. A head wound. You clean it carefully, wiping blood from his hairline, using the softest touch you can. He twitches beneath your hands but doesn't wake. You whisper to him anyway that he's safe, that he's not alone, that someone's here. It's a ritual now. You never skip it. By midday, the tent is heavy with heat. The stove works too well. You roll up your sleeves. The air is thick with antiseptic, sweat, and the faint copper tang of blood. The men murmur in half-sleep. A nurse sings to herself in the corner low, tuneless, more rhythm than melody. You recognize it. Something old. Something your grandmother used to hum when shelling peas. You join in softly, without realizing, your voice barely above breath. You find a note in the pocket of a patient's uniform. A letter he never sent. It's addressed to my little girl. You don't read the rest. You fold it carefully, place it in the envelope, and tuck it back beneath his pillow. He's still asleep, mouth parted, bandages thick around his chest. You check his pulse. Stronger than yesterday. You clean the floors again. Not because they're dirty, though they are, but because you need the movement, the routine. You wring out the rag until your knuckles ache, dragging it slowly across the planks. You hum as you go, in time with the rhythm of your strokes. You find a comfort in the scrape of cloth, the shine of clean wood. Evening creeps in slowly, gray and patient. You light the lamps before the sun sets. One by one, the tent begins to glow again, warm and golden, despite the chill. You wrap shawls around the sleeping men. You tuck in corners. You refill water jugs and fold towels and fluff pillows, even if no one will notice. You do it because it matters, because it says you are not forgotten. The man with the burns wakes. His voice is stronger now, hoarse, like wind dragging across stone, but steady. He asks for water. You bring it. He drinks slowly, eyes never leaving yours. When he finishes, he says, "Thank you." You smile, because that's all he needs right now. Gratitude, and someone to hear it. You watch as he drifts back to sleep, his breathing smooth, his brow soft. You sit by his cot for a moment longer, fingers resting lightly on the blanket's edge. He sleeps deeply, finally. You stay until you're sure the nightmares won't return. Night falls again. The frost outside thickens. The fox doesn't call tonight. The stars remain hidden behind clouds. But inside, the lamps burn low and kind, and the tent breathes with slow, steady peace. You walk once more between the cots, checking each patient, smoothing each sheet. You pause at Clara's boy. His fever has broken. You let your fingers rest on his forehead and close your eyes in quiet relief. You whisper good night to each of them, one by one, barely audible, like a prayer passed from lips to air. You whisper it even to the sleeping, even to the dying, even to the ones who no longer wake. You lie on your cot with aching bones. Your body is tired. Your mind is quiet. Your hands are still. The blanket is scratchy but warm. The lamp beside you dims, flickering softly like breath. You let yourself sink. Let your thoughts dissolve. Let the sound of distant breath and wind and crackling fire carry you gently into the night. You sleep. At last, clang of a metal tray. A voice calling a name you haven't heard in years. A field of poppies seen through a train window. You don't remember where you are until you do. Until your eyes open to the faint golden light of the oil lamp and the familiar shapes of cots lined in careful rows. The smell of sweat, of bandages, of boiled water, of something too old and heavy to name. You rise slowly, your joints whispering their complaints as you swing your feet to the floor. It's quiet, too quiet. You reach for your boots, lace them one by one, fingers moving through the practiced rhythm of a dozen mornings before this one. Outside, it's still dark, though you can hear the earliest sounds of a distant convoy wooden wheels on dirt. Hooves clapping in the mud, orders murmured low. Inside, only one patient stirs, shifting in his sleep, lips parted to whisper some forgotten sentence. You check him gently, your hand brushing across his forehead. Cool, a good sign. You light the first stove. The match flares in your hand, bright for just a second, then settles into a small, steady flame. The kettle sits above it like a promise. You pour water into the basin nearby and begin your morning rounds. The cots, the charts, the wounds. Everything has its place. Everyone is accounted for. You say their names softly under your breath as you pass small, sacred offerings to the stillness of the hour. Each one a spell to keep them anchored here in this world. The first wound you dress is smaller than most. A clean slash across the forearm, stitched up the night before. The patient, a man with a northern accent, winces but doesn't complain. He tells you he dreamed of his wife baking bread. You tell him you dreamed of a fox. He smiles just a little and calls that fair trade. You add an extra layer of gauze to his bandage and fold the corner neatly. It matters somehow. The neatness, the care. Later, you help the nurse from the next tent carry in a new stretcher. The man is pale, barely conscious. A jagged hole in his thigh where something should never have entered. You help lift him, one hand beneath his shoulder, the other cradling his wrist. He groans low and raw as you ease him onto the cot. You meet his eyes for a moment. He's terrified. You press your palm gently to his chest. You made it, you whisper. That's the hardest part. The surgeon enters soon after. He's already rolled his sleeves up to the elbows, the edges stained from yesterday. He doesn't speak, just nods once, and the two of you begin again. You light the lamp over the table. You hand him forceps, gauze, the needle, the bone saw. You hold the patient's legs steady as the operation begins. You don't flinch when the first cut is made. You don't blink when the blood starts. You focus on the breath in your body, the warmth of the light on your face, the slow cadence of your thoughts moving across the moment. Afterwards, you clean the instruments by hand, one by one. The metal cools quickly, even after boiling. You dry each piece with cloths worn to near transparency, folding them back into place with care. Everything has a place. Everything must return to it. That's the only way to stay sane. Lunch is a tin of beans and a hard biscuit. You share a table with 2 other nurses and 1 medic from the front. No one speaks much. The medic looks older than he probably is. He stares at his hands the whole time, eyes following the curve of his fingers as if trying to understand them. You offer him your biscuit. He shakes his head. You leave it beside him anyway. Later, you receive a bundle of mail to distribute. Some letters are folded in shaky handwriting. Others are crisp, addressed in ink with little hearts tucked into the corners. You walk the rows with the bundle in your arms, handing each envelope with a soft smile, calling out names one by one. Some men sit up straighter when you arrive. Others cry. One man refuses to take his letter at all. You place it on the cot beside him and move on. You keep one letter for last. It's addressed to no one. The handwriting is messy, the envelope unsealed. You open it gently. It's a poem, simple, about watching rain fall across a window pane. You don't recognize the name signed at the bottom. You read it 3 times anyway, then you tuck it into your apron pocket. You don't tell anyone. It feels like it belongs to all of you. As evening falls, snow begins to drift again. Not heavy, not harsh, just light, like ash swirling slowly through a quiet sky. You pause at the flap of the tent, watching it fall across the clearing, the trees beyond swaying in the same rhythm as your breath. It's peaceful, in a way that doesn't feel real. The snow covers everything: mud, blood, footsteps turning the chaos white and silent. Inside, the men begin to sleep, one by one, breaths slowing, shoulders easing. You wrap extra blankets where they're needed. You dim the lanterns, cover the stove, and sweep the floor with slow, steady strokes. The other nurses speak in low tones, trading shifts for the night. You offer to stay up. It's easier that way. The quiet is easier to bear when it's just you and the dark. You sit by the cot of the man with the burns. He's resting, his face still as stone, the gauze damp with salve. You watch his chest rise and fall. You don't realize you've drifted off until your head tips forward, chin brushing the edge of your collar. You blink, you breathe, you sit up again, and you wait for morning, then to keep out the cold but familiar. You sit in the stillness, wrapped in a blanket over your uniform, listening to the soft symphony of sleep. The muffled coughs, the shallow breaths, the occasional whisper of a dream breaking through. You have learned the rhythms of this place the way a sailor knows the tides. You do not fear the silence. You simply listen. The stove sputters a soft metallic sigh. You rise to feed it another log. The ember glow licks your fingertips with a phantom warmth. You pause just for a moment to watch the flame flicker. The light moves like breath, steady, slow, barely clinging to the wood. It is beautiful in its smallness, just enough to keep you going. You walk the cots again, careful not to make sound. Your boots move like shadows. You check bandages with feather-light touches. You feel foreheads with the backs of your fingers. You adjust a pillow for a man with a bruised face. You tuck a photograph back into a chest pocket where it must have slipped from a shaking hand. You recognize the photo. A mother and two children standing in front of a farmhouse. You do not know the man's name by heart, but you know the way he clutches that image even in his sleep. At some point, the snow picks up outside. The wind whistles along the canvas seams of the tent, but it's gentle like an old lullaby, hummed by the earth itself. You pull your blanket tighter and sit by the central table, where the medical records are stacked high. You flip through them idly, not reading, just touching the names, feeling the ink beneath your fingertips. These are not numbers. These are people, pieces of someone's world. All of them. A soldier moans softly in his cot. You rise without hesitation. He's feverish, sweat soaking his collar, eyelids fluttering. You whisper his name 3 times until his eyes crack open, just a sliver. You dab at his face with a cool cloth. His lips part to speak, but the words dissolve before reaching the air. You hum instead, that old tune again, the one you don't remember learning, only remembering. He sleeps again, deeper this time. You stay for a moment, your hand resting on the bedpost, just to be sure. Then you write a note in his chart with careful strokes of your pen, fever still present, responsive to voice, vitals holding steady. You initial it with a flick of your wrist and set the file aside. The movement feels calming, like setting something straight in a world made mostly of crookedness. You sit at the edge of your cot and take off your boots. Your toes ache and the soles of your feet throb with a dull, bone-deep hum. You peel away your socks, stained and stiff, and massage the arches with your thumbs. You do not wince. You do not groan. You simply breathe. The canvas shifts at the far end of the tent. It's the young nurse, Mara, with the dark braid and steady hands. She steps quietly into the lamplight, nods once, and whispers, "Rest? I've got it now." You don't argue. You trust her. She's seen enough now to know what to do. You rise slowly. The floor feels cold beneath your bare feet, but you walk the short distance to your cot and sit down again. You wrap yourself in your blanket and lean back onto the pillow that smells faintly of lavender. Someone once must have stitched the stuffing with dried flowers. You've never asked who. The breath you take now is deep, not rushed, not shallow, but full and soft, like slipping into warm water. Your eyes flutter closed. You hear Mara moving through the tent now, her steps light, her voice low. It's good, you think. It's good to let someone else carry the quiet for a while. And as you drift off, you think of snow falling on windowsills, of warm bread wrapped in cloth, of candlelight flickering against wallpaper, of quiet songs sung by someone you love just outside the door. You let the war go, just for now. You let the pain fall from your shoulders like a heavy coat dropped to the floor, and you sleep. And sleep, here. The canvas still rattles. The moans still rise and fall like a tide caught beneath the floorboards. But your limbs feel just a little looser, your breath just a little deeper. Someone has placed a folded scarf beneath your head. You recognize it as Mara's. You smile faintly, then sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your eyes with hands still scented faintly of iodine and ash. Outside the tent, the snow has stopped. The world beyond the flaps is white and heavy and still. You step out briefly, wrapped in your coat, to feel it on your skin. The cold is sharp, honest. It wakes you in a way tea never could. Trees bow gently under the weight of the frost. The sky is pale neither day nor night, but something in between, like a held breath. You collect yourself there. Let the cold press against your cheeks. Let it remind you that you are alive. Inside, the men are beginning to stir. Mara hands you a mug lukewarm coffee, thin and black. You thank her with a glance. She nods, already checking a chart with the precision of someone who hasn't had rest in days. You want to hug her. Instead, you take the mug and begin your rounds once more. Every step forward is a step into the familiar rhythm of care. A new patient has arrived. You didn't hear the ambulance. He must have come during your sleep. A young man, barely older than 17, his uniform much too large for his frame. He sleeps now, his face pale and smudged with dirt. You read his chart. Head trauma, possible concussion, minor frostbite on fingers. You kneel beside him and take his hand gently in yours. He stirs slightly, but doesn't wake. You whisper a few words anyway, that he's safe, that he's somewhere warm, that he's done enough. Later, you help dress the wound of a soldier with a jagged tear across his abdomen. It takes 3 nurses, the surgeon, and all your strength not to look away. He grits his teeth the whole time, refusing morphine. Need to think clear, he mutters. Need to stay sharp. You don't argue. You just hold the basin steady and squeeze his shoulder when the stitches begin. He doesn't cry out, not once. You find a rhythm in the simplest things. Folding fresh linens, repacking medical kits, replacing used bandages with care. You wipe down the surgical table slowly, listening to the cloth squeak softly over the wood. The sound soothes you. One small corner of the world, clean again. By afternoon, a letter arrives from a former patient, delivered by hand-crumpled, damp, but real. The handwriting is familiar. The name at the bottom brings a tightness to your throat. It's from the boy with the poetry, the one who wrote about birds and violets and seashell songs. He made it home. He says his sister really did wear violets. He says he can't stop dreaming of the tent and the smell of oil lamps. He thanks you without flowery language. Just a single line. You helped me find the quiet again. You tuck the letter into your satchel. You'll keep it. Maybe forever. As the sun begins to dip low behind the trees, you prepare the lanterns. You light them slowly, one by one, the flint striking again and again until the sparks catch. The glow settles over the tent like warm honey. The men relax a little more. You can feel it in the air. The man with the burns is awake again. His face is still heavily bandaged, but his voice is stronger than ever. He asks for paper. You bring it. He asks for a pencil. You find one. He writes with his left hand, clumsy and slow, but with care. You don't read the note. You don't ask. But he passes it to the nurse across the room. Her name is Elise. Her hands tremble as she reads it. She wipes her eyes with her sleeve and nods. You don't ask what it said. Some words aren't meant for anyone else. That night, you assist in the delivery of a baby. It's not a soldier. It's a village girl, young and wide-eyed, brought in by her mother after the local midwife fell ill. The hospital tent wasn't made for this, but then again, it wasn't made for any of this. You clear a space, boil water, gather cloth. The girl cries out once, then again, and you hold her hand the entire time. The child arrives just before midnight. A boy, small, perfect, alive. You cry, but quietly, because something new was born in a place made only for endings. You help clean the child, wrap him in a wool blanket, and hand him to his mother, who holds him like the last candle in the world. The other nurses watch in reverent silence. Even the soldiers nearby grow still. There's a hush in the tent, heavier than any snowfall. For a single, shimmering moment, the war feels far away. And that is enough. Breath, her hand curled protectively over his chest. You sit beside her just long enough to feel your own pulse slow, to watch the rise and fall of the infant's chest, so delicate it hardly seems possible. His eyelashes are like dust, his fists clenched tight in instinct. The tiniest sound he makes something between a sigh and a squeak draws smiles from everyone near, even the doctor who hasn't smiled in days. You leave quietly and return to the men. The mood in the tent has changed. It's subtle. No one speaks of it, but the birth has threaded something new into the air. A softness, a kind of sacred stillness. You feel it as you fold a blanket, as you rinse out a wash basin, as you rest a hand briefly on a shoulder before moving on. Life has broken through like green pushing through frost. You tend to a man with trench foot next. His boots were soaked for too long, his toes now purple and soft. He's silent as you clean them. Not because he's stoic, but because he's ashamed. You can see it in the way he stares at the wall. You speak gently, narrating each step. Warm water, cloth, this will sting. Not to warn him, but to keep the silence from closing in too tightly. Afterward, he finally says, "Thank you." You reply, "You're welcome." He doesn't look at you, but he nods, and that's enough. A courier drops off a crate just before dusk. Inside, a surprise, a fresh supply of gauze, bars of soap, 2 tins of condensed milk, 1 block of chocolate wrapped in wax paper. You and Mara share a grin as you unwrap it. You break it into small squares and share it with the patients who can eat. One man cries quietly as it melts on his tongue. "Reminds me of home," he says, "Christmas morning." You rest a hand on his arm and sit beside him until his tears stop. Later that evening, the man who laughed at everything stops laughing. He sits very still, staring at nothing. You approach gently, crouch beside his cot. "Is it quiet now?" he asks you. You nod. "Yes," you whisper. "It's quiet now." He looks at you like he's not quite sure if he's real. You take his hand anyway. You can rest. His breath slows, his eyes close. He doesn't sleep, but he doesn't panic either. That's all you needed to do. You prepare a small corner of the tent for quiet writing. Just a crate, a blanket, a stub of a candle. But it becomes a sort of refuge, a place where one man sketches birds. Another copies out letters before committing them to final drafts. One simply sits there, holding a pen and watching the flame. You don't speak to them while they write. You just keep the candle trimmed and replace the paper when it runs out. You find an old song in your memory. It comes back to you suddenly while you're wrapping a bandage. A lullaby your mother sang when storms would roll in through the windows of your childhood home. You hum it under your breath, barely audible, and the man you're treating looks at you with something close to peace. "My sister used to hum that," he says, voice rough as gravel, "when I was small." You nod. Then she had good taste. You don't stop humming. Not for the rest of the shift. Outside, the wind picks up again. The sky is bruised with night, the trees swaying like sleepwalkers. You stand beneath the canvas edge, feeling the wind comb through your hair, tug at the scarf tucked into your collar. You take a deep breath of winter. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls once, long and low, the kind of sound that reaches into your ribs and echoes. Back inside, the light glows soft and amber. The baby is still sleeping, the mother too. The soldiers' breaths rise and fall in slow unison, like waves along the edge of a moonlit shore. The fire is steady, the lamps are trimmed, and your hands are folded in your lap for the first time in what feels like days. This moment, this hush, feels holy, not in the way of churches or altars or sermons, but in the way of breath, of warmth, of life still blooming in a world that keeps trying to end it. You close your eyes, just for a second, and let the quiet hold you. It's on gravel, just a quiet meadow, the kind you haven't seen in years. There are bees drifting lazily between flowers, and the grass is so high it brushes your fingertips when you stretch out your arms. You walk barefoot, your heels warm from the earth. You don't look back. There's nothing behind you in this dream, only forward and wind. When you wake, the tent is still. The baby has stirred just once, but sleeps again, wrapped tight like a loaf fresh from the oven. You smile and rise slowly, your legs stiff from sleep, your shoulders carrying the weight of everything you didn't dream about. You pour water into the basin near the stove and wash your face with the cloth hanging nearby. The cold bites your skin, but it helps you return to yourself. You are here, this is morning. There is work to be done. You write a short note in the margin of the hospital ledger. Birth, one life added. You don't sign it. You just close the book and press your hand against the cover for a moment before rising. Today is a day of mending. You feel it in the pace of things. The wounds that need redressing are clean now. The coughs are fewer. A soldier smiles when you bring him water. Another asks to sit up for the first time in days. You and Mara laugh for no reason in the linen tent, giggling like schoolgirls as you fold warm sheets straight from the stove-top line. It's absurd, this joy, but it feels real. It feels deserved. The man who never speaks finally says your name. He says it slowly, as though testing the shape of it on his tongue. You blink in surprise. He looks down, embarrassed, and you place a hand on his shoulder. You can say it again if you want, you whisper. He doesn't, but later he hums while you clean his wound. That's enough. You write letters for 2 of the patients, one to a mother in Sussex, one to a wife in Reims. You let the men speak as long as they need, pausing to catch their breath or blink away tears. You write exactly what they say, even when their voices crack. You do not change their words. You simply smooth them onto paper, fold them gently, and seal them like treasure. After lunch-boiled potatoes and wheat broth, you make time to sit, just for 10 minutes. You bring a small wooden box out from beneath your cot. Inside you keep things. A button from a torn uniform, a dried flower pressed between pages, a fragment of a photograph someone never claimed, and that poem, the one about rain and window panes. You read it again now, tracing the curve of each letter with your finger. It calms you more than rest ever could. A medic from the front comes limping in with a sprained ankle and wild eyes. He speaks too fast, repeating details from a trench collapse as if trying to hold them all in his head. You help him sit. You clean the blood from his palms. You give him tea. You listen, nodding gently, your eyes never leaving his face. He doesn't cry, but you know he could. You tell him to stay the night. He doesn't answer, but he doesn't leave. That evening, the baby sneezes. The sound is tiny, sharp, and utterly human. Everyone in the tent turns to look, then laughs softly, in unison, a single sound. Not of pain, not of warning, but of surprise, of relief. The mother smiles, eyes sleepy but warm. You bring her fresh bread, a small bowl of broth, and your last sugar cube. She thanks you without words. Just a long, grateful look. You end the day beside the man who once begged you not to let him die. He's better now, awake, stronger. He jokes about his bandages, asks for books, says he wants to learn French before the war ends, just in case I survive and marry someone prettier than sense. You laugh. You tell him you'll teach him. 1 word per day. He agrees. You start with the word Solio. He repeats it softly, smiles. Night settles slow over the field. You close the tent flap and light the lanterns. The shadows lengthen. The voices dim. You sit near the stove, your hands in your lap, listening to the breathing of 30 men and 1 sleeping child. You feel something move inside you, not grief, not sorrow, but a tenderness so big it hums in your ribs. You don't sleep yet. You just sit while the night holds everything steady, bare, wrapped in a wool shawl pulled tight across your shoulders. The moon is low tonight, heavy with fog, barely more than a pale suggestion behind the cloud-thick sky. But it gives just enough light to cast long silver shadows across the earth. The trees whisper. The wind circles your ankles like a cat. For a few moments there is only the sound of your breath and the gentle exhale of a world too tired to keep shouting. You think of home. Not in aching ways, not like before. You picture it like a quiet echo of a kitchen window with frost on the glass, a kettle rattling gently on the stove, a pair of shoes warming by the hearth. The kind of memory that doesn't hurt anymore, only softens you. You wonder if the trees outside your old bedroom window are covered in snow like these. You wonder if anyone is standing under them, thinking of you. A fox passes across the clearing. Just a blink of movement, tail low, body sleek, ears alert. You freeze, and it freezes too. The two of you share a glance. Something ancient, something wordless. And then it's gone, disappearing into the brush like it was never there. You smile as you step back inside the tent. The baby has woken. He doesn't cry. He just makes soft noises, blinking slowly in the low lamplight. His mother adjusts her blanket and looks to you. He's hungry, she whispers. You nod, already heating water to clean her claws and prepare the small bit of milk you can spare. You hum as you work, soft as breath, and the baby turns his head toward the sound. That, too, feels like a prayer. Across the tent, someone calls out in sleep. You go to him. It's the man who joked about learning French. He's dreaming something not good. You place your hand lightly on his shoulder, and he jolts awake, gasping. His eyes lock onto yours. For a moment, he doesn't know where he is. Then you say the word again, gently. Solio. His breath evens. He nods. Sun, he murmurs. Yes, you say. The sun. You stay there for a moment longer, until you're sure he's okay. Then you rise, check the oil on the lamps, and begin wiping down the counters. There's no rush, no list, but the routine comforts you. It's a rhythm you understand. Later, Mara joins you. She brings 2 slices of hard bread, wrapped in a cloth. You each sit on crates near the stove, chewing slowly, warming your hands on tin mugs of tea. Neither of you speaks for a long time. Then she says he's starting to look like a real boy now. You nod, knowing she means the baby. He smiled at me earlier, she adds. I think. You grin. Maybe it was gas. You both laugh quiet, muffled by the soft roar of the stove and the deep night around you. The laughter feels like an old friend returning home. When the bread is gone, you sit back and let the warmth of the fire lull your bones into something like peace. The 2 of you speak about small things, shoes that don't fit, a letter Mara hopes to write tomorrow, whether or not the chocolate supply will ever return. You tell her about the fox. She tells you she's never seen one. You say, next time, I'll save you a seat. Before she turns in, Mara pauses at the door and says, you make this place feel like something else. You raise an eyebrow. Like what? She shrugs. Not a battlefield, not a grave, just something softer. You nod once, unable to say anything. She disappears into the back tent. You spend the rest of your shift tending the low tasks, collecting laundry, refilling water jugs, folding the same towel 3 times just to get it right. The snow picks up again outside, and the light takes on that bluish hue it always does when the wind returns. You wrap a shawl around your neck, your hands moving automatically, the warmth from earlier settling into memory. The baby finally sleeps again, his chest rising slow and deep. The soldiers breathe in time. The lamps dim. You sit down, close your eyes, and let the hush fold over you like a second skin. And in that moment, fragile and glowing, you remember that survival here is not always about making it through the war. Sometimes it's about keeping something human alive inside of it. Faded, but warm in its own quiet way. You don't wake suddenly. It's more like surfacing as though you'd been underwater, wrapped in the soft weight of night. Your eyes flutter open to the sound of boots scuffing against wood and the soft slosh of water in a tin basin. Mara is already awake, her braid tucked under her cap, face half shadowed by dawn. She hands you tea before you sit up. It tastes like dust and smoke, but it's hot, and that's enough. There's no urgency this morning. No trucks arriving. No shouting. No stretchers crashing through the flap. Just the slow, steady movement of the hospital tent breathing back to life. The men begin to stir, rubbing sleep from their eyes, shifting beneath their blankets with the groans of old bones and stiff limbs. A few whisper to one another. One hums a tune you vaguely remember from the countryside, a waltz played at dusk on old fiddles and splintered porches. The baby cries once, sharp and short, then settles as his mother adjusts his blanket. You check on them quietly. She's asleep again, a peaceful sort of exhaustion that reads more like prayer than fatigue. The boy's tiny fingers clutch a corner of her sleeve. You tuck the covers more tightly around them and step away, the corners of your mouth still curled in the gentlest smile. The first task of the day is cleaning a wound that's almost healed. A soldier who used to cry out every time you changed his dressing now nods at you, says, "I barely felt it," and lifts his hand to show you he can move it again. His fingers twitch, and your heart stirs in your chest. You smile not because of what it means for the war, but because of what it means for him. A letter, a teacup, a future. Outside, the sky is clearer than you've seen in days. You push back the tent flap to let in the breeze, and the air smells of ash and wet grass and something faintly green. It smells like a season trying to change. You close your eyes and breathe it in. A bird calls from one of the nearby trees, shrill, uncertain, almost embarrassed to be singing in a place like this. Still, the song lingers. Back inside, you help shave a man who's been too weak to lift his arms for a week. You lather his chin with warm water and soap from the new shipment. His eyes flutter closed as you move the dull razor gently across his skin. Feels like I might be human again, he murmurs, voice raw with sleep. You always were, you whisper. You hand him a mirror when you're done. He laughs a sound of surprise more than joy and says, "You made me look like someone my wife could kiss again." You turn to the next cot before your eyes can sting. Later, you are asked to write again, this time for a man who doesn't speak above a whisper. He gestures, pausing often, his voice a thread barely strong enough to carry words. You lean in, ear close to his mouth, catching fragments. Don't let her forget. The tree by the river, tell her I wore it. He nods when you write those words down. You want to ask what he wore. A scarf? A medal? A smile? But you don't. You just write it exactly as he said. He signs his name in shaky script and closes his eyes. The hours drift like slow clouds. You clean. You check vitals. You replace bandages, help men sit up, pass water in chipped mugs, and reheat broth so thin it might as well be memory. But no one complains. They sip in silence, their hands trembling, their eyes heavy-lidded. You pat a shoulder here, tuck a corner of a sheet there, and every movement says, you are here. You matter. You are seen. In the afternoon, you rest briefly, just long enough to let your back settle and your mind quiet. You sit beside the stove and pull your knees up to your chest, fingers wrapped in a thin blanket. The fire crackles with low contentment. The medic who limped in 2 days ago sits across from you, writing something on a scrap of paper with charcoal. You don't speak. You just share the warmth and the quiet. You think of all the names you've learned, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, some whispered, some shouted in agony, some written on the insides of jackets, others only known to you because someone left behind a letter, a button, or a name carved into a comb. You carry them like seeds in the pocket of your apron, hoping they might bloom again, somewhere beyond this. As dusk folds over the sky like a blanket, the soldiers settle once more. The baby makes a soft gurgling sound as his mother sings. The song is slow and low and lilting, like river water against stones. You sit beside them for a while, listening. Your eyes close, just briefly, and your breathing matches hers. For a moment, everything is still. And in that stillness, you feel something like peace. Not because the world has changed, but because you did. Dimming lanterns before their oil runs out. The fire in the stove crackles low, its rhythm slower now, like a heartbeat winding down. You rise from your cot and stretch gently, your muscles stiff beneath your uniform. The ache is familiar. It's almost a comfort now, a quiet reminder that you're still moving, still here. You light a lamp and begin your rounds. The glow spreads softly across each face, men asleep with arms tucked beneath their heads, foreheads lined with pain or rest or something between. You pause beside the man who never opened his eyes until this week. He's breathing evenly now. You adjust his blanket. He doesn't stir, but his hand curls slightly when you brush your fingers against it. You don't speak. You just sit beside him until his breath slows again. The snow has returned. Not heavy this time, just a few flakes like sighs drifting through the cracks and resting on your coat. You wipe them off absently as you open the flap and step outside. The moon has risen higher now, casting its pale, watery light across the field. Everything glows in shades of silver and ash. You breathe in the cold. Let it sit on your tongue. It tastes clean, empty, like space between thoughts. You think of letters that never arrived, of names spoken once and never again, of boots left at the foot of empty beds. You close your eyes, and for a moment you see all the ones you've tended. Not just those still here, but the ones who passed through. The ones whose names you still whisper in your mind like candle smoke. You hope they know they were seen. Back inside, Mara hums as she rewinds a roll of bandage. The sound fills the tent like honey and tea, soft, slow, unhurried. You recognize the tune now. It's one your mother used to play on a cracked piano back before the war, before uniforms and blood and whispered prayers. You join her quietly, the two of you humming together without looking at each other. Just two voices rising and falling in harmony. A soldier near the stove stirs from sleep. He reaches out, dazed, fingers curling around the blanket that slipped to the floor. You kneel beside him and cover him again. His eyes flutter open, just long enough to see you. "Still here," he mumbles. You nod. "Still here," you echo. He sleeps again, soothed. You boil water for tea no one asked for. But when you bring it around, steam curling above the mugs like threads of a dream, the men accept it wordlessly. A few whisper thanks. One asks if you'll stay near while he drinks. You do. You sit beside him, sipping your own, your knees nearly touching. He closes his eyes between each sip, as though savoring more than just the warmth. The baby hiccups. You turn your head to the sound and smile. His mother chuckles softly, pressing him close. "He's greedy," she says. "He'll outgrow this cot in a week." You nod. He's got plans. The two of you share a moment of tired joy, a stillness untouched by the outside world. You hand her a clean cloth and refill her water. She reaches for your hand and squeezes it once, firmly. No words needed. In the corner, someone has started writing again. The scratching of pencil on paper is almost hypnotic. You close your eyes and let the sound pull you inward, like a lullaby in a language only your bones understand. The fire pops. Someone exhales deeply. The wind hums against the canvas. The war is still out there. But in here it pauses. Just for tonight. You sit back, wrap yourself in your shawl, and let your body settle into the rhythm of the hour, the soft murmur of breath, the rustling of blankets, the memory of a hymn rising in your chest like steam. You whisper a prayer not to be heard, not even to be answered, but just to say, "I remember, I see, I care." And then, beneath the watchful warmth of your own quiet vigil, you rest your eyes. You do not sleep, not fully, but you drift. And for now, drifting is enough. Steady. It taps gently like fingertips drumming on fabric, wrapping the morning in a hush that feels softer than silence. The air smells different today, too. Less of soot and iron, more of wet earth, of thaw. The war still grumbles in the distance, but it feels far away like thunder from a storm that passed in the night. You rise slowly, listening to the rhythm of your own movements. The creak of the cot, the faint crinkle of your uniform, the brush of your boots on the wooden floor. Mara is already awake. She passes you tea with a smirk. "No foxes last night," she teases. You grin. "Just rain," you reply, taking the mug in both hands. It warms you instantly. She adds, "I think it's spring now." You nod, looking past the flap of the tent, where the ground is beginning to soften and small shoots of something green have pushed through the mud. Life persists. Even here, you begin your rounds as always. But today there's something different in the men's faces and ease around their eyes, a softness in the corners of their mouths. One jokes about the tea being stronger than usual. Another hums while you change his dressing. Even the man who never speaks offers a nod and a pointed gesture to the candle on his bedside. You relight it for him, watching the flame bloom into gold. The baby is cooing. He kicks softly in his sleep, his tiny fingers splayed like stars. His mother looks rested for the first time since she arrived. You sit beside her, and the two of you share a moment of companionable silence. She says, "He slept through the night." You smile. "So did we, I think." She nods, eyes still fixed on her son. "He's going to have a life, isn't he?" she asks, voice low. You answer without hesitation. "Yes, he is." Outside, someone is singing. A soldier standing in the clearing beyond the medical tent, his voice rising with the wind. It's not a melody you recognize, but it's simple, repetitive in that calming, almost childlike way. Other voices join in, slow at first, then steady. Soon the sound swells into something gentle and whole, a song for no one and everyone. You pause in your work to listen. The wounded hear it, too. You see their eyes drift toward the tent flaps, their chests rising with breath that comes easier. You see one man mouth the words, even though he has no voice left. Another taps his fingers on the rail of his cot in time. You feel your throat tighten, but you don't cry. Not today. You step outside, apron damp from morning chores, boots sinking slightly into the softening earth. The field is washed clean. The trees drip with silver, and the air is thick with birdsong. Real birdsong this time. Not memory, not dream. You close your eyes and let it settle on your skin. For once, there's nothing you need to do. Nothing urgent to chase. No alarms, no stretchers. Just breath, just light, just this moment. You return inside to find the men talking. Not loudly, not carelessly, but talking. One tells his story about his dog. Another says something about a wedding he plans to attend once this is over. Someone asks you what your favorite flower is. You answer, "Violets." They nod solemnly, as if this is an important detail they must remember. Maybe it is. You pass out paper and pencils without being asked. Men begin writing again. Letters, poems, lists of things they'll do when they leave. You make yourself a list, too quietly, on the back of an old supply invoice. Visit the sea. Bake something sweet. Sleep through the night and wake to silence. Plant violets. Never forget their names. Later, as dusk gathers gently around the tent, The baby lets out a soft laugh. Everyone hears it. Everyone stops. You look up from your notes. The men freeze in their cots. Even the doctor chuckles under his breath. It is the smallest sound, quick and unsteady, but it feels like sunlight on bare shoulders. The laugh of something new, something untouched. You tuck the last blanket of the evening. You dim the final lamp. You sit near the stove one last time, listening to the breath of men at peace, the sigh of a sleeping mother, the whisper of rain growing fainter overhead. This is how it ends, not with a scream, not with a gun, but with breath, with candlelight, with the soft, steady presence of a nurse in a war that forgot how to be human, and then remembered again through her hands. You close your eyes, you sleep, and somewhere far away the war grows quiet.